Hey internet friends! While wars and rumors of wars are swirling, the American media seems to be craving one war in particular. A war with a country portrayed as a nuclear threat, with its government accused of funding terrorism. These are thinly veiled war cries being propagated by the same media who never addresses how the United States also funds terrorism, arms extremists, and stages coups abroad. All paid for by your tax dollars, sending us into this endless repetition of the same war, over and over. Wars the majority of Americans don't have to fight or witness firsthand. That's reserved for the young people used as cannon fodder, and when these soldiers return from war as broken pawns in the global scheme, they're treated like trash. That's why today we're going to talk about what the media won't tell us about Iran. Because what's most revealing about the mainstream media's agenda isn't what they do say, it's what they purposefully omit. From what I've observed, when it comes to Iran, our government leaders in the media like to start with 1979, the year of the Iranian hostage crisis, as though Iranians decided out of the blue one day to storm the US Embassy and take Americans hostage for 444 days for no reason whatsoever. Because they hate our freedom, right? Right, so let's rewind, because Iran was once part of a great empire. What we refer to as the Persian Empire, an empire that sat atop vast wealth in the form of black gold. But then Britain decided to make Iran their oil playground, and the Anglo-Persian Oil Company was created in 1908, after discovering a large oil field in Iran. The British Navy ended up switching from powering their ships with coal to oil, and then sailed around the world and created the British Empire. In 1935, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company went through a rebrand and was renamed the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. The good oil times for Britain began to dwindle in 1951, when Iranians elected Mossadegh, a secular leader who dared to renationalize Iran's oil, taking it away from British control.
Well, I've been in actually Iraq and Persia for the last 31 years.
Oh, well now you're just the man I want, because I'd like to know what you think about this evacuation, the sudden evacuation.
Well, I think it's rather a pity. One of the reasons is that the Persians cannot run their refinery, all their oil distribution, without British technicians at all.
You're quite certain about that, are you?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain. On a 100% basis, it's just impossible.
Do you anticipate that we should be going back soon?
Well, I hope so.
Yes.
For the benefit of UK and the world in general.
But what if Iran, who had been a great empire like a century ago at this point, had total control of their oil production? Oh no, we can't have that, especially not post-World War II, when the United States and the UK viewed that precious Iranian oil as a means to rebuild the economy. So, naturally, the United States Central Intelligence Agency, along with the British, carried out a military coup in Iran, overthrowing their democratically elected government in 1953. The CIA admitted to all of this 60 years later, acknowledging their involvement, but the damage was done. This was after the American reputation was good and tarnished. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company had undergone yet another rebrand and renamed themselves the British Petroleum Company, or what we now know as BP. And of course, the CIA waited to admit all of this after the US-backed authoritarian monarch, known as the Shah, was ousted during the Iranian Revolution, the same year that the American media likes to start all Iranian history, 1979. The Iranian Revolution yielded several results: a new supreme leader, a new constitution for the Islamic Republic of Iran that was one part theocratic and one part democratic, also the 1979 oil crisis, as well as the start of the Iran-Iraq War, and of course, the Iran hostage crisis. This crisis occurred when a group of Iranian students who supported the revolution took over the US Embassy in Tehran, taking hostage 52 Americans who were both diplomats and citizens. But don't forget, the CIA was still there, in Iran and nearby, financing and arming jihadists in Afghanistan through Operation Cyclone. It's not out of this world to consider that the hostage crisis was also a CIA concoction, as the main beneficiary was George H.W. Bush, who was the director of the CIA in 1977. He served as vice president throughout the 80s and eventually became president of the United States in 1989. The hostage crisis effectively destabilized the Carter administration. And as a side note, there are a series of documents I've listed that support the theory that President Carter was undermined by the CIA faction loyal to George H.W. Bush, both in an effort to keep Iran out of communist grips and also to put George H.W. Bush in the White House. Let us take a moment to summarize before we move on. The Brits were in Iran over a century ago. They got kicked out, and they wanted back in because Iran oil fields were and are a total cash cow. Additionally, American animosity with Iran didn't begin in 1979. It's dishonest of the American media to portray Iran as the sole aggressor, or an unprovoked terrorist state, when Britain had been in Iran all this time, stealing their resources, and the United States played a key role in killing Iran's chance at taking back what was theirs. It wasn't cool, it was total betrayal. And let me just say this, if Iranians and Americans have anything in common, it's that we've both been dubbed terrorists by the British government. For Americans, it was during the American Revolution, and for Iranians, it was for most of the past century and more so in the last few decades. But I digress. We live in the present, not the past, so let's move forward to the tangled mess we're in now. The resource-rich Iran of today is of both geostrategic and economic importance as a prosperous country in the greater Middle East. They're allied with Iraq, Lebanon, Palestinian Authority, Syria, Venezuela, and of course, Russia. And in 2015, the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United Nations, as well as the European Union, got together to start the framework for the Iranian nuclear deal, and it's been a point of contention ever since. Basically, Iran wants two things out of this deal. They want sanctions relief so they can grow their economy, and they want access to nuclear technology. So this deal was supposed to be designed in such a way that would limit the amount of uranium that Iran could get access to, such that they could do low-level enriching for power generation and other peaceful activity without having enough to build weapons for at least 10 years. But critics of this deal have posed this possibility that gets a lot of traction in the media. If Iran makes a bunch of money, they might expand their weapons programs, which might lead to Iran's neighbors retaliating should Iran threaten them, thus causing war in the Middle East. But newsflash, war is already happening in the Middle East and has been for some time. And just to be fair, let me ask this question. Why wouldn't Iran want to expand their weapons programs? Last time I checked, Iran wasn't a country of blind or deaf folks. So surely they can look around and see the destruction all around them and hear the war drums beating. Seriously, take a look at their neighbors who are in ruins for dropping the petrodollar. We have Iraq in 2000, invaded by the United States on the false pretense of harboring weapons of mass destruction. The US has been in Afghanistan for the last 16 years. There's an ongoing civil war in Syria. There was a US-backed regime change in Libya in 2010. And in 2016, Iran dropped the US petrodollar in favor of the euro for oil sales. And now, more than ever, the American media is putting the heat on Iran. But if I were Iran, I'd want nukes too. Wouldn't you? Self-preservation at this point. If they're sitting on a big cash pile with no nukes, how much longer do you think they'll have their cash pile? How much longer do you think they'll have their country? Meanwhile, Israel has nukes, doesn't disclose them, and isn't IAEA compliant, meaning they are in direct violation of UN rules and, as a result, cannot receive support from any other country, including the US. But in September of 2016, the United States agreed to provide Israel a record $38 billion in new military aid over the next decade. And what do you know? Israel is on the forefront of promoting a war between the United States and Iran. I wish I didn't have to say that. The same thing over and over in every single video I make about Israel and the United States, but it's the same war over and over with the same aggressors, but a different target each time. It's been outlined by retired four-star General Wesley Clark in an interview he gave detailing that the Bush administration planned to take out 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finally, Iran. Fighting wars for peace seems a bit ridiculous at this point. And the goal of a stabilized Middle East that we destabilized to begin with is equally ridiculous. So what is the true objective of provoking war with Iran? And all these other countries, for that matter. Is it expansion for Israel into the greater Israel? Is the goal for Israel to have total dominance in the Middle East so that the same big name oil families can have control over the oil in the claimed land so they can then take that free oil and sell it at exorbitant prices? Is the goal for all of these countries to be under one banking system? To be under the IMF, World Bank control? Is the goal total dollar dominance?
You were over there. The secretary criticized the conduct of the Iranian elections and Iran's record on democracy. He did so standing next to Saudi officials. How do you characterize Saudi Arabia's commitment to democracy? And does the administration believe that democracy is a buffer or barrier or against extremism?
Yes, why won't the American government or the media address why the US continues to undermine and destroy all of the secular and most modern Islamic states while making arms deals and aiding the most repressive and brutal ones? Here's what the American media won't tell you about Iran. The issue is not about nukes. The issue is not really even about Iran. It's nothing personal. The issue is that we have an American empire with only paper money and its value resides in oil sales. And when oil sales are no longer done in dollars, the empire will collapse. What do you think, internet friends? Do you believe Iran is a threat? And if so, a threat to what? My goal on this channel is not for you to take what I say at face value. I hope that you will question everything and research what I've said here and verify it for yourself. As always, I look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon.